My first question is, can you tell me where your family originally came from and when did they come to America?
Uh, my grandfather on my father's side came from the Pinsk area of Russia around the turn of the century. He was a young man of about 14 years old at the time. Met my grandmother on the boat coming over here. She was also from Russia. On my mother's side, her ancestors came from Bohemia. As a matter of fact, we have a book that was written by one of my relatives called Six Generations from Bohemia, which tracks the history of that side of the family, the roots of the Ronker family.
Wow. Where were you born and raised?
I was born, you couldn't tell by my accent. I was born in New York City in 1945, raised in the city and on Long Island.
Great. When you were growing up in New York and on Long Island, which obviously it has a very Jewish environment, can you tell me a little bit about what being Jewish meant to you when you were growing up? How did it express itself, and what did it mean to you?
Well, I was bar mitzvahed and went through confirmation in a town called Great Neck, which is primarily Jewish. But I had come from a town which was not primarily Jewish in my earlier years, which was Malvern on the south shore of Long Island. Actually a community which was probably 50% black and well integrated. Was a member of a temple there as a young man, child, until I was in 10 or 11 years old when we moved to Great Neck. But I sensed a difference even as a child of 11 years old in the communities. There were a lot more people who were like me in Great Neck than there were in Malvern. But I think the experience in Malvern was helpful in terms of being able to relate to different people.
Did you ever experience any forms of anti-Semitism growing up? Was there ever a point where you
I
felt...
don't recall growing up. I do recall having interviewed, after graduating from law school, a number of law firms. One particular incident where the interviewer made it quite clear without being direct that I wanted to pick a law firm where I was comfortable. And that was a sign to me that this was not a place that I would be interested in working.
When did you come to Florida, and what brought you here?
I came to Florida in July of 1977. My law firm, which was based in New York, made me an offer I couldn't refuse and asked me to open an office here in Boca Raton.
Tell me a little bit about the early Federation, the creation of the Federation, the birth of the... Were you involved in the birth of the original Federation, the break-off? Who were the main players, and how did it make you feel to suddenly have your own federation?
I was involved from the day that this federation was created. Actually, it was formally created around a conference room in my office when Jimmy Bear, Norman and Betty Stone, and I believe perhaps Carl Enselberg and Shirley Enselberg, we actually physically signed the Articles of Incorporation. But my involvement starts even before that formalizing of the establishment of the Federation. I was originally involved with the Palm Beach County Federation prior to '79 when we were formed. There were a few of us, a handful, again, Norman and Betty Stone, Jimmy and Margie Bear, Carl Enselberg, who were actually on the board of the Palm Beach County Federation. One of the things that happened early on when I was involved with the Palm Beach County Federation was that I was on a small group that was given the task of finding an assistant executive director for the Palm Beach County Federation. And we actually interviewed Rabbi Bruce Warshall, which was exciting because here we had someone who not only went to the same law school I did, but was, I thought at the time, overqualified for an assistant executive director position. In fact, that turned out to be the case, which was, we were fortunate. But someone with vision, independence, and who could think outside the box. He worked very closely with Jimmy Bear, who I would consider to be the father of our federation. Spent countless hours doing the things that needed to be done to form a new federation. With some of the founders, myself included, we quickly came to the conclusion that we were a different community from Palm Beach, that we could raise more money for the causes that Israel and local needs by being independent, that traveling 45 minutes to an hour to a committee meeting in Palm Beach was wasting a lot of time. And so we decided that for the betterment of the causes that we were interested in, and in fact for the betterment of both communities, it would be best if we were independent. Now, some people in Palm Beach did not initially agree with that conclusion, and there were some bumps along the road. I recall attending a somewhat acrimonious board meeting in Palm Beach where the final vote was taken for our independence. And after that meeting, I recall a celebration with Jimmy and Margie Bear, Norman and Betty Stone, and a few others who attended that meeting. We were looking for a place to celebrate and have a drink, and the only place we could find that was open at the time was a Howard Johnson's on Okeechobee and I-95, where we celebrated over coffee, tea, and pumpkin pie. But it was important moment in the history of our federation, as much so as the signing of the Articles of Incorporation. And we really went from there.
Can you tell me a little bit about the first success stories?
Well, there have been so many in the 25-year history. We started with a storefront operation on Northwest or 2nd Avenue. And Bruce and Helene Eichler, who was his assistant at the time, were the professionals. We really had a very small group of people. And that's what we sort of invented it as we went along. We were what we call a functional federation. We didn't have independent agencies. The reason for that was plain and simple. We didn't have enough people. So that the members of the board of the federation also were those that wanted to see a JCC, that were involved with the Jewish Family Service. And we had people, leaders that came along. Actually, our community has been fortunate because as people retire from communities up north, we get the best of the leadership from established federations up north. It's sort of a melting pot here. At the time, we were the Wild West. I call it the Wild South. My own involvement was because I believed in my heart in the tradition of Tikkun Olam, and I also felt that if our history taught us anything, it taught us that as Jews we have to take care of ourselves. If we pass the baton, there's likely to be no one there to accept it. But I had just come from New York City, and I had been involved briefly with the Young Lawyers Division in New York. And I saw that it would probably take me years and perhaps decades to make a meaningful contribution and to have a significant leadership position in New York. Well, coming to Florida as a young man in his early 30s, if you were interested, had the time, the energy, and the commitment, you could have a meaningful leadership position because there were so few of us. And you could make a meaningful contribution. And by the way, I believe to today that the young people in this community still can make a meaningful contribution and can get active and can take significant leadership positions. It's not like some of the more established traditional federations up north, where it takes years before you can make a significant contribution.
Right. Talk to me for a moment about the realization, if you will, of the demographic explosion that was to become the Boca area, the South Palm Beach area, and in turn how that created the need for the expansion of services, the JCC, the academy, the foundation, all of the different elements that suddenly there was this enormous need.
Well, historically, it's been my view that the Jews settled in Miami Beach and moved north through Dade County and Broward County. They skipped, for whatever reason, Boca and Delray and moved to Palm Beach. So in 1977, when I first arrived, there were some Jewish professionals, there were some Jewish retirees, but we really did not have a significant Jewish population. As the Federation was formed, and sort of coincident with that in 1979, Jews began to settle in this area. And as they did, the need for the components or agencies that you mentioned, the Foundation, the Jewish Family Service, the JCC, the Donna Klein Jewish Academy, JARC, all of these needs arose, and we, sort of very exciting, built the institutions as the needs arose. We responded to the challenges as they arose. We at one point tried our own newspaper. We failed. There were bumps along the road, but when you look at what's been accomplished over the 25-year period and the generations of leaders, starting with our founders, that have been involved, it's a pretty miraculous story, as you said.
One of the things that I found most fascinating in my interviews so far, and I'm getting the impression that it was primarily coming from Dick Siemens and Bruce Warshaw, and this is the move to the campus, where everything, even in Dick Siemens' words, everything was east. Boca meant east because there was nothing to the west. And here came Dick Siemens and basically said, okay guys, go west, young man, we're going west. Can you tell me what people thought about that?
Well, there is a lot of truth to that. The focus of the town was east. Our offices were east. We started on Southwest 2nd Avenue. We moved to Federal Highway. We moved to a second office on Federal Highway. And then we bought a campus on Spanish River Road, which was still east. No one was really focused on 441. I can't remember having been out there. However, the town center mall was being built, which was not 441. And when you think about the name town center, the center of the town was moving gradually west. Granted, the campus on 441 was further west, and it was the land was available. The Siemens and the people that were involved with his group saw that this was something that could be done, that could become a reality, and through their generosity and the work of a lot of people, including Dick and Carol, the land was transformed into what we have as our campus today. By the way, anecdotally, at our last Federation board meeting in December, we had a guest from the New York Federation who was a national leader who spoke with us about a specific issue. And one of the comments that she made was that she was struck, having come from New York of all places, with the fact that we had such a phenomenal campus, center of activity in one location. They don't have that in New York, and there are probably very few communities throughout the United States that have that. So Dick and Carol saw that, were some of the visionaries that I spoke about before, and basically, through their generosity, gave us the opportunity to locate all our agencies in one location. And that's meaningful in a lot of ways because it adds to a sense of community if we have everything in one location. And I think that our future is boundless. I'm optimistic about the future because as long as we prioritize and keep our sense of community and we don't have parochial interests, this community has an opportunity to do something that is really extraordinary, even greater than what we have so far.
Can you tell me about the day the campus opened? The first day, walking around the campus?
Well, obviously we saw it being built, so it wasn't a surprise, but I think anyone that was there had a great deal of pride in what had been accomplished.
What was the first show you saw at Zinman Hall?
I can't remember that.
Okay. What's the first show you remember seeing at
Other
Zinman
than
Hall?
Federation board meetings, which sometimes
Right.
turn into shows.
um, Tell me, you just touched on it, so let's continue. What would you say are the proudest achievements that you feel of the Federation?
Well, all of the things we've discussed, but one of the achievements that I was involved with, I mentioned the hiring of Bruce Warshall. I was also involved on 2 other search committees, which I think produced individuals who made significant contributions. The first was Arthur Jaffe, who was the first professional that our Jewish Community Foundation hired. And Arthur made a significant contribution in terms of the growth of our foundation. Brought that from its infancy to adolescence. Then Mark Glickman took over as Arthur retired. I was also involved in the search committee that hired our current executive director, our executive vice president, Bill Bernstein, who has a lot of the qualities that I mentioned before in terms of competence, in terms of thinking outside the box, in terms of creativity and originality that Bruce Warshall had. So we've sort of come full circle, starting with Bruce, who we're fortunate to have for a period of approximately 10 years, and he moved on to other things, and now Bill, who I look to as a leader for the next 10 years. But there's so many accomplishments. To single out one rather than another, I personally was involved with the creation of the legal documents required to create the foundation, so perhaps that's where I focus. But if you talk to Amel Clayman, who created JARC, you talk to the people that were involved with the creation of the JCC, these were all things that were phenomenal contributions because they were created from scratch. We created a Jewish community to service the needs. We created the institutions to service the needs of this growing community, the fastest growing Jewish community in the country.
Right. I mean, that's really one of the things that amazes me the most, that it literally went from nothing and from year to year has just grown exponentially to the point where if you look at it today and you look at it, 25 years ago, it's hard to imagine that it got there from there. Bruce, talked a lot about that, the vision, and everybody thought, you're crazy, you gotta be crazy.
It's nice to have a vision. Many people have visions, but we've accomplished the vision in 25 years. It's miraculous what's been achieved in 25 years. And when someone celebrates the 50th anniversary of this federation in the succeeding 25 years, perhaps there won't be as dramatic a development of institutions to service our community. But my guess is that we're going to see continuing dramatic evolution of this federation in the service of the community as it continues to grow.
That was my next question. What are your hopes for the future of the Federation?
Well, as I said before, my hopes for the future of the Federation is that we maintain our sense of priority in a sense of community. And if we do that, our future is optimistic and boundless.
There are young people today in the Jewish community, young couples with children, older people, who are not affiliated in any way whatsoever with the Jewish community. If you could sit one-on-one with someone who was not affiliated in any way whatsoever, what would you say to them? How would you tell them, how would you convey to them how important it is and what they could get, what their benefit would be from joining the Federation?
It's such a part of my being that it's so important to be involved as a Jew. As I said before, our history has shown us that we have to help ourselves, that if we don't do it, no one's going to do it for us. And the time is now. Life is not a dress rehearsal. It's now. So get involved. You will receive more benefits from getting involved than what what you give to the community, although that will be significant as well.
And finally, you mentioned the fact that Jewish contribution, Jewish helping of each other, tikkun olam. The Jews as a people have significantly contributed to world culture. Our culture has contributed to the world culture. Can you talk for a moment about the importance of preserving the culture of the Jewish people and how it relates to everything we've talked about?
The Jewish culture is something that is so unique and needs to be preserved. When you look at the number of Nobel laureates, when you look at the contributions to science, literature, any field you can think of, there is such a disproportionate number of Jews that have succeeded in relation to our percentage of the contribution. We have something unique. We need to preserve it. We need to pass it on to our children. It's interesting, my daughter has come back to live in Boca, and she is reaping the benefits with my two grandchildren of what we have built over the last 25 years. So that gives me a nice feeling of satisfaction as well.
That's great. Is there anything I've forgotten to ask you, anything you'd like to add? You've got 500 people sitting in Zinman Hall watching you right now. What would you like to tell them?
Other than what I've already told them?
Yeah.
Well, I think we should be satisfied, but not satisfied with, I think we should be satisfied with what we have done over the course of the last 25 years to build the institutions to service this Jewish community. But we have a long way to go, and we don't want to rest on our laurels. As you mentioned, we have a lot of Jews out there that are not involved. We need to get them involved. We need them to understand that to make a contribution to our community, to our Jewish community, is important both for them and for our sense of community.
Bravo. Thank you.